Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we're going to be ranking the 11 studio albums and 10 favorite non-album tracks of Siouxsie and the Banshees. I encourage you to check out some of our past rankings, which have included David Bowie, The Cure, Nine Inch Nails, Suede, Jesus and Mary Chain, Slowdive, Bauhaus, Depeche Mode, Cocteau Twins, Dead Can Dance, etc. With me, as always, we have Greg Fasolino. Hello, Greg.
Howdy.
Greg was the co-author of the Trouser Press Record Guide and the Trouser Press Guide to 90s Rock, former editor of Reflex and Faces magazines, has written for Creem, Fangoria, The Big Takeover, and Guitar for the Practicing Musician, among others. Former member of the Naked and the Dead and the Bell Hollow, and currently in the Harrow, a musical archivist featuring a YouTube channel filled with loads of content, concerts, rare recordings, and interviews. And we also have back Frank Deserto. Hello, Frank.
Cheers, y'all. Hello.
Frank is a New York City musician, DJ, and writer. Writing credits include postpunk.com, music blog Systems of Romance, former resident of Wierd Records, and member of the bands Funeral Crashers, Revel Hotel, Dream Affair, Frank Just Frank, and the Chameleons, current member also of the Harrow, curator of recent Cherry Red records collections such as No Songs Tomorrow and Cherry Stars Collide. Be sure to check out links for the three of us down in the video's descriptions. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Brett, singer and bass player of the band Audra, a music teacher. I've also toured and recorded with artists Black Tape for a Blue Girl and Unto Ashes on the Project label. Had the fortune of sharing the stage opening for some great artists over the years like New Model Army, AFI, The Mission, Peter Murphy, Jeanette Napolitano, etc. All right, Siouxsie and the Banshees, a very short bio. The Banshees formed in London in 1976. After developing a large following, the band was signed to Polydor Records in June 1978, releasing their debut single 2 months later. The core lineup of Siouxsie, Stephen Severin, and Budgie would solidify after the release of their second album in 1979 and would last until their breakup in 1996. During their run, this highly influential, genre-defying group released 11 studio albums, around 30 singles, a couple of compilations, and a live album. And then in 2002, the Banshees would reunite for a US, UK tour and subsequent live album before calling it quits once again. As of the time of this video, the band has been retired since. If you're unfamiliar with Siouxsie and the Banshees or know just a few songs, we hope this video will be a gateway to some additional discovery for you. As always, we're going to start with a few rounds of trivia to determine the order that we will be revealing our lists. As always, we do not share our lists with one another, so the reveal is the first time we are seeing it. As always, 2 points. If it is your question, you get it correct. If you miss it, it goes to the other person where they have the opportunity to get 1 point. And we'll just start it off here with Greg going first.
Okay.
All right, a little bit of a tricky one to start off with. Please name the birth names of the three longest members of the Banshees, Siouxsie Sioux, Budgie, and Stephen Severin.
Oh, well, Siouxsie is Susan Ballion. Um, Steve Severin, what is his real name? I know Budgie's real name is Peter, but I can't think of his last name. I'm going to pass on those two.
All right, over to you, Frank.
So we said Susan Janet Dallion, right? We have Peter Clark, who's Budgie, and Stephen John Bailey is Steve Severin.
Wow, even the middle names, Frank. Nice work. All right, 1 point over to you, and it is now your question.
Okay.
All right. Siouxsie and the Banshees had four guitarists named John. Name all four of them and the studio albums that each one performed on.
John McKay, which is The Scream and Joined Hands. We have John McGeoch, who's Kaleidoscope, Kiss in the Dream House, and Juju. We have John Valentine Crothers, which is he played in The Thorn, but he also played on Through the Looking Glass and Only Tinderbox, and he was dismissed after Through the Looking Glass. And we have John Klein, who was Specimen. Who's from Specimen. He played Peep Show through the end. So Peep Show, Superstition, and the Rapture.
2 points, Frank. Excellent work.
All right.
All right, question 3, over to you, Greg. In the band's lifetime, they released 3 singles that were cover songs. Name the 3 songs along with their original artists.
Dear Prudence, the Beatles. Now this is just A sides, correct?
Correct.
Let's see. A side. Wheels on Fire, which was the band. And what was the third one? I'm drawing a blank. Frank, you're probably going to get this.
Oh, dang. All
All
right.
right. Jump in. The Passenger, Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
You got it. Frank swoops in for 1 point. All right, going into the fourth question. Frank, you are 4. Greg, you are at 0. All right, Frank, name the first and last single by the Banshees.
First single, Hong Kong Garden. Last single, oh my God, it's one of two, so I'm gonna say it's Oh Baby or Stargazer.
That is correct. 2 points.
It's either Oh Baby or Stargazer, and I figured Oh Baby was the lead single, so just had a 50-50 chance on that one.
All right, back over to you, Greg. So this is a question that I've used with past band trivias that we've done. Name 5 Banshee songs that feature an animal in the song title. B-sides and non-album tracks can be included, but not cover songs. And be creative on this one.
Okay,
5 songs.
Swimming Horses, Quarter Drawing of the Dog, Painted Bird. Let's see. Oh, what else? Frank, you're gonna get this. You're crushing me on this one. I'm passing.
Do you want to give another one? I mean, because I really only have one more, and I think we're gonna go. I'm gonna take Scarecrow.
How many was I supposed to get? 4?
5.
5. Yeah.
You got 3. You got 3. And get creative with it.
You always get me with this one, Brett. I always draw a blank. I don't think of songs with animals. I'm gonna let Frank get it.
All right, Frank, we need 2.
I don't know if I'm gonna get it because I know Scarecrow is obviously not an animal, but crow is in the name.
That's what I meant by be creative.
Yeah,
All right,
creative.
that's 4.
Oh my God! And what is the other one without looking into?
Don't turn around.
No, don't turn. It's not up there anyway. I don't think. I feel like I have to let this one go because I feel like Scarecrow is the best I can do that you didn't get.
All right, so you guys, no points on that one, but I'll throw out a couple other ones. How about Lunar Camel?
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
Throw Them to the Lions. She's Cuckoo. And Catwalk.
Catwalk.
Oh, and Monitor.
Oh, that's real creative. Considering that's
a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, that's cool.
That one's a stretch,
screen. Yes. All right, fair enough. Okay, cute.
Okay, last question. This is Frank, right?
Yep.
All right. All right. Here's an easy one to end the trivia. This is the only album for which a single was not released during its original promotional cycle.
The album that did not have a promotional single.
I know the answer to that.
Are you sure there's one? Hang on. The Scream.
Yep. There you go. 2 points.
Yeah, I was saying the Scream had singles adjacent to it, but we're not on the album. All right.
Yeah, and then the Metal Postcard single.
Yeah, which is right.
Not during that album's promotional cycle. Frank, you tore it up 8-0. So, Frank, you can determine the order that we reveal our lists in, including this time.
I was going to be the homo guy and not do this, but for the sake of being birthday weekend, I'm going to go first on this one.
Okay.
And honestly, Greg, I know I love you, but I'm going to have Brett go second just to mix it up.
Okay.
And Greg, you go third. Is that cool? And Greg, you're the most, I think, the most passionate Banshees fan, so I'd love for you to round it out for us and take us home.
Cool.
So Cool.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. All
Yeah.
right. So before we get started on the ranking, just want to reiterate that we are including only the 11 studio albums, which includes the covers album Through the Looking Glass. No EPs, no live albums, no compilations. Tracks from those will be considered for the non-album track portion of this video, which we will each run through our 10 favorites after the album ranking is done. And as always, check the links in the description because we will each be mentioning our three favorite tracks from each album, and those individual playlists of the three of us will be linked in the description. So, Frank, kick us off with number 11.
Okay, so I have this inkling here that number 11 is going to be pretty similar for everybody. So let's just get it out of the way. And it's going to be Superstition from 1991, produced by Stephen Hogg, who did New Order, Pet Shop Boys. I think Nigel Godrich, who eventually did Radiohead, like touched us a little bit. Anyway, this record's never really clicked for me. And I have to say that unlike any of the records, which I like almost all of them to some extent or another, this is the one that I think is just, I dislike a lot of it. We're going to talk about the band's flirtation with alternative pop over the years. But this is the record that I think they went really too far into that territory. And without, it didn't have as much mystery or darkness to really ground this record, and they really went overboard with the sound. So they were trying for the hits. They were trying to do all those, like I said, True Faith or Pet Shop Boys. I think Stephen Hawking produced It's a Sin. So they're really kind of going for that big club sound, and they succeeded. I mean, this definitely put them on the charts, but really it just falls flat for me as a Banshees record. The best songs in some are the darker ones, the deeper cuts. But it mostly just sounds like Wilson Phillips to me, most of this record. Anyway, so I want to give an honorable mention to the track Softly, which is a really pretty slip of a synth song, and a little favorite on this one. My three favorites in this one are going to be all in a row. They're all kind of put together in the beginning of the record, and Drifter is one, and this one sounds like the most classic Banshees track to me. Almost Peep Show-esque, a really nice slow burn moment on this record. My second favorite is Cry, which is there's really a great song underneath all the glossy veneer. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Iggy's Blah Blah Blah, where it's so overblown in the 80s, early 90s production, but there's really great songs on it. So Cry to me kind of lives in that same Blah Blah Blah, candy kind of Iggy Pop world. And then my favorite song on the record, and it's always been a stunner for me and almost should belong on the Rapture or something, which we'll talk about later, is Little Sister. But I thought that was the deep cut sister of Face to Face, which is a really sexy song. All the mysterious synth work on that track just kills me. So that's some kind words and some not so kind words on Superstition from 1991.
I'm excited about this. There's going to be some really polarizing opinions already, I can tell. So here we go. Number 11, Hyena. So,
What?
yes,
Oh,
yes. So,
holy
so
moly.
I don't, so I did a solo Siouxsie and the Banshees ranking probably 11, 12 years ago. And I usually don't look back at those when I prepare for this video. But I do remember that this was number 11 back then as well. I don't dislike this record. In fact, the two singles I think are wonderful songs, but I just tend to like everything else more. Um, and for those unaware, and it'll be talked about obviously with the reaction of these two with my reveal here. This will, Robert Smith of The Cure played guitar on this album. Three favorite tracks. Number 3 for me is Belladonna. Number 2 is Swimming Horses, which feels like kindred spirits to The Cure's Six Different Ways. It's got a kind of similar feel to it. And my number 1 is Dazzle. I mean, what a beautiful intro of strings and vocals. And then it kicks into the main groove. Listen closely for all those super cool percussion overdubs and the vocal panning on the word dazzle. When you listen to it in headphones, it just rapidly bounces back and forth from ear to ear. There's a lot of ear candy in the mix. But yeah, number 11 for me is 1984's Hyena.
Wow.
Wow, I'm shocked, Brett. Never would have guessed that. All right, I guess I'm up. I'll preface it by saying how pumped I am to do this because I am a real Banshees fanboy. They were my favorite band in college in the mid 80s, and I was in their fan club. And in my opinion, no band has had a greater amount of great guitar players. And in particular, John McGeoch is always probably a candidate for my favorite guitarist of all time and biggest influence. So I'm really excited to do this. But on that note, there's one album that I don't really like very much, and I'm going to really piggyback on what Frank said because it's Superstition from 1991. I despised it when it came out. It felt like a real sellout. I still don't really like it very much. Um, I read some interviews with Steve Severin where he basically just came out and admitted that he wanted to make a hit album, and it shows. It feels very fake and artificial. I feel like it's their album where they're saying, we're jealous we're not big pop stars like The Cure, so we're gonna try to do that. But on the other hand, The Cure had hits without this kind of artificial grasping at you know commerciality. Take away Siouxsie's voice, and it doesn't really sound anything like the Banshees at all. It's just kind of as Frank said, it's generic early '90s dance pop. I think the computerized production is completely at odds with the band's strengths. Guitar is a total afterthought. Budgie's extraordinary talents are wasted. Kiss Them for me is impressive in terms of what it achieved as a pop hit, and it's arguably catchy, but it just feels still kind of trite to me. And some of the songs on here are among their worst they've ever done, like Silly Thing. But as Frank said, a few of the better ones would have been really, really marvelous if they had a less polished approach. And that's really all I'm going to say about it. 3 tracks. Number 3, Little Sister, as Frank said, really good. Number 2, as Frank said, Drifter, which is eerie and would have fit perfectly on Tinderbox or Peep Show. And actually, the one song I like the most is Shadow Time, even though it's pretty poppy, but it has this kind of irresistible 70s AM pop vocal melody that just kind of I really enjoy, even though I wish it had a little more grit. But there you go, Superstition.
Man, and by the way, I don't hate Wilson Phillips, by the way, but really, I think that was pretty apt. There's so many cheesy early 90s dance pop things that just really yeah, cool. All right, so anyway, back to me for my number 10. I'm going to choose Through the Looking Glass from 1987, which it's the last album with John Valentine Carruthers and the first with Martin McCarrick, who played in This Mortal Coil, Seventh Seance, really cool synth player, but arguably kind of the downfall of the band. Some fans really think. So he became a major player in the body of work, for better or for worse. So it's tricky to rank this low because really there's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of, it's like trying to be pinups in that way. There's a lot of cool covers on it. It is them listing all of their influences on here. But we've talked about this a few times. Cover records, no matter what, as much as I have fun with them, can never rank too highly on principle because it's not their songs. The Banshees do put their own nice little spin on it, and I really like it. But there are a couple of really nice choices on here that are outside of that basic Roxy, Bowie, television thing like that. I really think there are choices like Strange Fruit and Trust in Me, Billie Holiday, and like The Jungle Book. Like it's really kind of cool. It kind of does play in their colorful psychedelia, and I really enjoy that about it. So I actually really like the originals of everything on here. I like every cover. There's no song on here that's a dud. It might have been, and actually, as someone who, Greg, remember when we finished our album, we wanted to do a covers EP because after doing something a masterful like Tinderbox, we just want to have some damn fun. And I understand why they would make this record, and it got them some big hits and things like that. But it's while it's a fun way to reconnect with your love of music, I can't fault it for existing, but I also can't rank it much higher. So aside from Sea Breezes, which I think is my honorable mention on this one, and She Cracked, which is a B-side, and I don't even like The Modern Lovers, but it's a really cool B-side on here. I'm going to go with my 3 favorites. Okay, so Wheels on Fire, which is a great single, band, Bob Dylan, all that. Beats the original. That one actually beats the original for me. I really love their cover of Wheels on Fire. It really, really makes it masterful. I love the way that the symphonic strings on it. My second favorite is Hall of Mirrors, which I heard before I ever heard Kraftwerk's version, so it's really kind of what a bold choice. I think it's really alien cold. One of the most cold, I think, Kraftwerk songs there ever were, which is saying a lot. And turning it into this really beautiful, pummeling, subdued almost, but pummeling beat. So I really am rather attached to the version of Hall of Mirrors. And my favorite is Trust in Me, but I think it's the most inspired choice on the record. And the Jungle Book, and it's about the python tricking the main character into eat him, but it makes it this really sexual, sensual, erotic thing, which is, I guess maybe there's an undercurrent of that, but either way, Trust in Me is a really cool choice and my favorite on here. So yeah, Through the Looking Glass, interesting choice, interesting record, pretty cool though.
Number 10, also Through the Looking Glass. Yeah, I agree, Frank, on most of the time covers albums. It's hard to rank them above the band's own work. Covers albums, I really enjoy them, and I think they're great because I think what it does is it helps introduce fans to other bands that they may have not ever heard. And I think that the as you said, Frank, the reimagined versions on this album are really, really good. They're really in line with the Banshees and just great versions. Um, so this came out back in 1987, and like Bowie's Pinups, with Frank mentioned, 14 years after Pinups. Um, I I think, what was I going to say? Sorry. Let's just get into the three favorites. Sea Breeze is Roxy Music. I love Roxy Music, his first two albums especially, and I think the Roxy Music or the Siouxsie version of Sea Breeze is fantastic. Number two, This Wheel's on Fire. Agree with you completely on that one, Frank. And my number one favorite on this one is Hall of Mirrors by Kraftwerk. So there it is, number 10, Through the Looking Glass.
Well, I guess we're going to get to play bingo for this because I'm going to echo you guys and pick Through the Looking Glass as well. And you pretty much said 90% of what I wanted to say. But I mean, I agree with Frank. I can't think of a cover album that would rank super high for me in any artist canon. And so this really isn't an exception. But it is really well done. I actually prefer it to Pinups or an album from the same time period, Kicking Against the Pricks. But I just don't play it that often. And as Frank said, there's really no failures on it. Though the only track I think that doesn't maybe quite work is Little Johnny Jewel, because I feel like it's a little too slick and that misses some of the mystery at the heart of the television original. The Passenger was their one of their biggest hits from it. I'm burned out on it, but I really commend the clever arrangement, which Iggy himself praised. So I'm just going to go to my three songs too, which I think are exact same as yours, Brett. Sea Breezes. I love the shimmering aquatic glow that it starts with. Two, Hall of Mirrors. It's austere. It's so elegant. And Wheels on Fire which is the one cover that I really do prefer very much to the original. So yeah, I think we're in alignment on that one.
All right. So here comes my spicy pick. Let's brace ourselves for this one. And I'm going to go with the debut record, The Scream, for my next one. I know. See, there it is, right? Greg, you saw this coming, right? We've talked about this. This is one thing we've talked about. So my take on The Scream is it's a very influential record, and I really, really need to be in the mood for it. And when I am, like I actually listened to it today, and it felt great. I loved it today, but when I did this first ranking, when I first listened a month or two ago, I hated it. Really, I have to be in the mood for it, but when I am, look out. So the issues I have with it, though, are first and foremost the Beatles cover. Let's just get this out of the way. I don't mind I actually love their cover of Dear Prudence, but I despise their cover of Helter Skelter. It really breaks the record up for me. And what I dislike most about this record is I love John Mackay and Kenny Morris is playing on this. I think they are underrated section of the band that most people were influenced by at the time, but nobody really talks about the same way they talk about John McGeoch. But I find Siouxsie to be very, very unpleasant and almost atonal and not great to listen to on this one. I know she's going for horror movies, art rock. She's finding her voice at the same time, but I find it, not in the same way as like Liz Fraser trying to use her voice as an instrument. It grates my ears when I'm not in the mood. So, as far as other albums of this era, like, Chairs Missing, Unknown Pleasures, Real Life, the first Killing Joke record, I like any one of those records more than The Scream, but I understand that The Scream had to come first. This is arguably the first post-punk record, the first punk record that had that shrill of darkness that really let it fully enrapture them. So arguably, I get that. And I kind of prefer, but I also prefer what stuff like the Raincoats or the Slits or Lilliput or any of those other bands were doing in that same sphere, which would give or take the same year, right? Doing like art, pop, punk, taking Can and Noi and all these atonal things. So I kind of, for me, it just doesn't hit me the same way as all the things that were happening in the periphery do for me. So that being said, I'm just going to jump right into my favorites. I'm going to give another special mention to Overground, but I prefer it on the Thorn. I actually prefer the really castanets and strings and big version of that. So my three favorites are Metal Postcard, I also love the Massive Attack cover at Metal Postcard, Mitigeisen, really cool. Two, the closing track, Switch, I think is really awesome. And my favorite song here is Mirage, and it's always been Mirage. And I think that song really kind of does encapsulate that early Banshees feel and does knock out of the park. So I don't know, maybe people are gonna turn off the video after I said the Scream is where it is, but that's where it is. Sorry, y'all.
All right, number nine for me. I'm gonna go with the final album, 1995's The Rapture. I really appreciate bands that take risks and don't stay in the past. They evolve and change from album to album, and The Rapture is a long way from the Scream, the debut, a long way from it. And I spent a lot of quality time with this one, preparing for the video. And it's quite polished at times, melodic, but there are some tracks that do harken back to some of the earlier work. Produced by the Velvet Underground's John Cale, whom the Banshees covered the song Gun on Through the Looking Glass, and would later go on tour with Susie and Budgie's band, The Creatures. While I do enjoy the upbeat poppiness of the lead single, Oh Baby, I think it was probably a poor choice to lead the album and single. It kind of reminds me of like Thursday's Child, David Bowie opening hours with just kind of like an overtly kind of poppy song that would have probably been better kind of put in the deeper into the track listing. Uh, I don't understand why this album seems to get panned a lot, as there are a lot of great moments on it. I really like the song Sick Child, and whenever the intro begins, it immediately makes me think of the movie The Craft. It was used in the film, but not actually included on the soundtrack. Three, oh, sorry. Three favorites on The Rapture. I'm going to go with Fall from Grace. Melodic. I think John Klein's guitar playing really shines in the chorus and the post-chorus. And listen for those long pick slides that you hear in there. Really cool. Number two for me is Love Out Me, the closing track, and it's become one of my favorite Siouxsie tracks of the band's later work. And number one, my total clear favorite on this one is the song Forever. I think it's just a beautiful track. So number nine for me, 1995, the final album, Scream. Or The Rapture, sorry.
All right, for my number nine, I'm going with 1988's Peep Show.
That's
I, I didn't really love this album when it came out, and I still don't love it, but it does have some really credible songs, and it's not pop crap like Superstition. But this period of the band, when as Frank mentioned, they added John Klein and Martin McCarrick, who was also in Mark and the Mambas. That's by far my least favorite era of the band. I feel like that's where they lost their place as my favorite band, and they kind of became mortal. To be honest, my adoration of the Banshees was always as a guitar band first and foremost, despite all the lineup changes. And I really wasn't happy when after John Valentine Carruthers left. I think the band kind of said, enough with indulging all these guitar players. Let's sideline that, make the band a more pop enterprise, make the keyboards more prominent. And I don't really think it really works. The sound here is a bit generic. The edges are all smoothed out. I mean, some of the songs like The Killing Jar are really elegant and well done, but they don't really sound especially like the Banshees. I mean, without the voice, again, it could be U2 or later Echo and the Bunnymen. In fact, this album reminds me a lot of the fifth Echo and the Bunnymen, the eponymous one, where just like with the Banshees here, they smoothed the sound out, had less interesting drum rhythms, the guitar parts aren't as interesting. And I really don't mean to diss John Klein. Ironically, I liked his guitar playing with Specimen on Catastrophe much better than anything he did with the Banshees. And another issue I have with this album, I mean, I found some of the songs are just a little annoying. Like Peekaboo was their first big hit here, and it's still kind of, I find it a little annoying and silly. And then there's some other material like Burn Up and Raw Head and Bloody Bones that kind of flirts a little bit too much with goofiness for me, and I don't really want goofy in my Banshees. So it's a good album. It's got to be a little low for me. And the three songs I'm going to go with: Ornaments of Gold at 3, Scarecrow at 2, and the one song here I do really love is The Last Beat of My Heart, which is a really tragic, hushed hymn that transcends the album's tendency to be a little bit bland. So there we go. Peep Show.
That is, can you hold that one up again for 1 second?
Yep.
And can you, yeah.
Oh, I got the wrong album.
I love how
Well,
I called the Rapture the Scream, and then immediately after that,
yeah. All right.
Greg's all peep show, and then he holds up his last record. I was like, I thought he showed this
I
already.
mean, I've had 2 beers
mixed them
already,
up.
guys. Like, what,
You know,
like, what's
you can tell this. As I said, this era is not my favorite. I mixed up those two albums.
It's adorable. I actually love that. That's
All right.
All right. And actually, I am not sure where. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna stick with my original ranking and not mess with things. So I'm gonna go next with. This hurts me to put it here. And actually, this was my least favorite Banshees record for so long, and I thought it was a pile of crap. So the fact that I'm putting it even this high is fantastic. So I'm gonna go with 79's sophomore record, Join Hands. And here's what's up with Join Hands, right? So I hated this record for the longest time, and you know why we hated it? I hated it. The Lord's Prayer. It's terrible. I know it's part of their history. It's just 20 minutes of self-indulgent, noisy, uninspired. It's not that cool. It sounds like crap, and it really puts a giant blight on the whole album for me. So for a while, I just refused to listen to the rest of it because of that. But then, really, otherwise, though, I gave it another listen. I actually could listen to it 5 or 6 times during this whole exercise. So the fact it's risen this far for me is pretty cool. I could see where The Cure were really inspired by it. I know Joy Division's Closer was inspired by this record. It's a really great, great John McKay and Kenny Morris stuff. There's a lot of dark chants, a lot of really dark stuff happening here. Maybe the first truly gothic record in that way. But I really loved the first. What's confusing about it is the first half of the record is fantastic. There's great singles around here. You have The Staircase. You have Love in a Void. You have great material around here. So why the hell they had to put Lord's Prayer here? It just tanks the whole thing for me. Really, it does. And the best part about the Lord's Prayer is I actually don't mind it for the first 10 minutes, but after a certain time, when Siouxsie starts clucking like a dying chicken. And that's kind of where I start. I just have to check out with it and cut it, make it an EP. The UK is frustrating this way. So really, I can only put Join Hands here, but I can't believe it's risen this far. I can't believe it's not butter. Here we are. So my 3 favorite tracks, Regal Zone. The bleeding saxophones on that one. I love Regal Zone. I'm really glad I got to really fall in love with that song here. Number 2 is Placebo Effect. The squalls on that one again. You can almost hear Daniel Ash's career jumping off from Placebo Effect. I love the Thorn EP version of it as well. That's that song has actually been living in my head for a while, so it should be number 1. But my favorite on here is Playground Twist. Iconic, those flangey guitar lines, the pummeling beats. It really is perfect. So Join Hands. Like I am glad it lives here, and I'm glad I like this album now. So I'm gonna have to say that about it.
All right, number 8 for me. All right, here we go. Let's see the reaction here. I'm gonna go with A Kiss in the Dream House, 1982. The band would really start to evolve their sound here and take more time in the studio on the 5th record. Bigger arrangements, violins, cellos, organ, recorder. This would be the final album to feature John McGeoch, who left prior to the album's release. Some other tracks that didn't make the top 3, Cocoon, that jazzy bass line always makes me think of The Cure's Love Cats, which would get released a year later and a month after Robert Smith and Steven Severin's collaboration as The Glove. But I have to admit that I've never liked the song Slow Dive. But my 3 favorites on this one are Painted Bird at number 3, number 2, Melt, and number 1, Cascade. Number 8, A Kiss in the Dream House.
All right. For number 8, I'm going with 1995's final album, The Rapture, which it was a welcome return to form after the kind of soggy pop mess of Superstition. I loved it at the time for that exact reason, but with 30 years gone by, which holy moly, 30 years since this album, I've reassessed it as very good, but not truly great. It's consistent, but it does have a little bit of filler, like songs like Lonely One and Tearing Apart, I think, are, a little bit of filler. It's a very backloaded record. The last third for me is where it gets really good. Well, I don't really, rate him in the league of the 3 prior Johns. I think this is definitely was John Klein's best work as a Banshees guitarist. I feel like he was given a little bit more room to contribute on this album. I really like the Morse code lead motif and the vacuum cleaner interjections on Love Out Me, and his Mick Ronson tribute solo on Double Life was pretty awesome. I also appreciated that they put some meat back on the Banshees' bones on this record. Not Forgotten and Love Out Me are by far the heaviest things they had done since Juju, really. So it's a good album. For the three songs, I'm going to pick Not Forgotten at number 3. Number 2, the title track, which is a really engaging epic with some hypnotic Kraftwerk, Popova kind of repetition. And then it has this exotic string-driven coda that's marvelous. And as Brett noted, the best song on the album, I think, is Forever. It has this wonderful twinkling majesty. It's really beautiful. So number 8, The Rapture.
Cool. All right, number 7. This one teetered back and forth between 7 and 6 for me, but I switched it today, but I'm reverting back to my original ranking, and I'm putting Peep Show here from 1988. And for all the reasons you said, Greg, there are some really nice moments here, but there's a lot of pop veneer. This is actually I think the Banshees' favorite album of theirs, if I read correctly. It's their personal favorite, which I don't understand. There's a lot of triumphant sounds on this. And it is very popular, and it's one of their most eclectic, and I like it for those reasons, but I also think there's a lot of missteps on it. I really despise Burn Up. I think Burn Up is my least favorite Banshee song, minus The Lord's Prayer, which I don't even know if I count, because it's sort of a pseudo cover, experimental mood piece, clucking chicken stuff. But Burn Up, I mean, might as well. I see the chickens that she's having a do-si-do with on Burn Up. I think Burn Up is just awful. And for me, that splits the album in two. It just kills the entire momentum of the album. I like Peekaboo Okay. I love The Killing Jar. The Killing Jar is a really great single. I love a couple of those songs we'll talk about in a minute. Between that and Burn Up just stops me dead in my tracks. So I can't really, even though it may have some really great tracks, just having that real misstep on it. I can't really do it though. But another shout out to Last Beat of My Heart, which I can't believe was a single. The Italian accordion all over it just feels like you're in Venice somewhere. Really beautiful. But then my favorite track. So let's say number 3, Ornaments of Gold. I love how hard that song hits. It's a really lovely track. I really do like that one. Number 2 for me is Scarecrow, which I think is a perfectly constructed song on their catalog. That whirling bass groove. I think it's a bass groove. It's really, really cool. Gives me chills. Makes me wonder how the hell Steve Severin did that. And then the chorus hits. It's really great. So it's folky. It almost sounds like All About Eve in a way, folk rock. A little bit of witchy vibes in it. And speaking of witchy, my favorite track on this is Rhapsody, which I think is almost a Cocteau Twins track. It's almost, folk horror mood to it. I always forget about this song because I don't really love this album, but it sneaks up on you, kind of whispers something sensual in your ear, and then it kind of slits your throat and dances in your blood. So Rhapsody, to me, kind of hits all those really nice horror-esque, beautiful moments the Banshees do, sensual and scary at the same time. But really, the other stuff is a little too mid for me to rank it much higher than that. If they had more of the tracks like that, this would be their best record for me. But alas.
All right, number 7 for me. I'm gonna go with the 1978 debut, The Scream. Raw, primitive. I really dig John Mackay's guitar playing all over this. Jagged, edgy. I think he's totally underrated and often overshadowed by the likes of John McGeoch. I like this album a lot more these days than I ever did in the past. I find it a thrilling ride every time I drop the needle on it. 3 favorites. Frank already mentioned Mirage. I love the doubled vocals on that one. Number 2, the song Switch, which Frank also mentioned. My first exposure to Switch was on the live album Nocturne, which is a great version on there. And my number 1 favorite pick on this one is Carcass. Amidst the dark, edgy feel of the overall record, there's also an underlying current of poppiness that comes through. And D, C, G major chords make up the bulk of Carcass, and there's these hand claps in it. And, despite the production and the edginess of the time that it was released, it's kind of a poppy song. So, number 7 for me is the debut, The Scream.
All right. For number 7, I'm going with number 2, Join Hands. which I think is the band's most difficult to rate album for the very reasons that Frank noted. When Join Hands is good, it has the depth and control that might be missing in parts of the Scream. Side one, as Frank noted, side one of Join Hands kicks side one of the Scream's ass to here and back. And some of these songs really prefigure the darker, gothier stuff they revisited on Juju. And as Frank noted, John Mackay's use of flanger on this album was seminal as a musician. It's a really fantastic album until you get to side two, when it is dragged down by the dreadful Lord's Prayer. And in reading a lot of their biographies, and was a nut back then. I had to have every book that ever was ever written about them. I think they were really pressured to come up with a quick follow up to the Scream, and they were also having internal band issues, and there just wasn't enough material, and so they did what a lot of bands do, and they just reused old stuff. But in this case it really backfired. I mean, they dug back to their Sister Ray type improv vocal ranting thing of Lord's Prayer, and but there's just this seemingly endless studio version is just not even fun. As Frank said, it's not even wild sounding. Like, I know, Frank, you said you don't like Helter Skelter, but at least that was kind of a wild sounding cover. This just is lifeless, sterile, it's turgid. It's just a shame because it hamstrings the album. If they had only like not done that and maybe put Staircase Mystery, which was a non-album single from that period, on there, and maybe the amazing B-side Pulled to Bits instead, you would have an alternate version of the album that would be better than Cream. So it's a schizo record. The parts that are great though are great. And my three favorites: number one, the opening Poppy Day, which is incredible. It just hits you right in the chest. Number two, Placebo Effect, terrifying, beautiful. John Mackay's riff is just godlike. And my favorite song on the album, and one of my favorite Banshees songs, is Icon. I just love the wonderfully weird arrangement of this song. The guitar is so exultant. It has those tribal drums. So many like 80s goth bands, mine included, were so influenced by that song in particular. And I love Steven Severin's lyrics on it. She sings, "Thine eyes rain down from heaven, I'd be blind without them." That's just stunning. So number 7, Join Hands.
All right. Number 6 for me, and the highest that will appear here, is their final record, The Rapture, with John Cale on board. I find this to be a really underrated and unfairly maligned album, like you've all said. And I do like this more than most fans do, and more than some of the Stone Cold classics. I like it more than Peep Show and Join Hands and The Scream, which is maybe blasphemy, but whatever. But Greg, I actually totally agree with you that it is very backloaded, which is very rare. I feel like front loaded, they're still trying the superstition thing and trying to get those pop hits. And it's kind of almost a misfire. And I listening to it, was really hard to rank it because I felt like the first half, I'm like, wait, why do I like this record so much? I thought I love this record. But when it really grabs you, then it really, really grabs you. Oh Baby is probably the only song I dislike, but the first couple songs don't really do it. But really is like, like Greg, you also said, it was a really great way to recover and really go out in a band, go out and at least something that wasn't just a sad, former shell of what they used to be. There's some really cool aesthetic choices. You mentioned the Mick Ronson solo, Greg, also on the Double Life, which is actually the only guitar solo, I think, in their entire catalog. Thinking about this, there's an actual legit solo in the way you would take a solo. I think it was another band we talked about recently that did this, maybe Bauhaus or something like that just don't have solos. But well, either way, this is the first time I think you hear one. It's also beautiful chamber pop and really alternative rock here. There's a lot of cool sounds on it. What I would think though, is if they cut a couple of those early tracks, Oh Baby, and what was the early one? Tearing Apart, whatever, but then put on Beside Ourselves, which despite the cheesy name is awesome and is really heavy too. And really any of the B-sides from this, it might have actually been a top 5 or top 3 or top tier record for me. But that's the choices they made, and here we are. So my 3 favorites, I love the number 3, the title track, their really longest, most majestic, all over the place track. I think it's really sprawling and beautiful. So the Rapture is number 3. Number 2 is Love Out Me, which you've all mentioned. It's a really great closing track, maybe a great kiss from the band to say goodbye to. And my favorite track on this record is Not Forgotten. So I think that one is one of the best Banshees songs, and it really recaptured their early former glory. So the Rapture, number 6 for me.
All right, number 6 for me, I'm going to come in with Join Hands, 1979, the second album. Both of you have already talked about this. Join Hands was released just 10 months after the debut. I think it took what they achieved on the Scream and, in my opinion, kind of stepped up the songwriting. Final album to feature drummer Kenny Morris and guitarist John Mackay, who had both quit the band on the day it was released. I really dig John Mackay's little saxophone bits. I think Frank, you mentioned it on a different track. They pop in every now and then, like on Regal Zone, but especially on Playground Twist, which adds a cool theme over the flanged guitar. Uh, Completely agree with both of you. I never even listened to the Lord's. I stop the album right before it gets to the Lord's Prayer because up until that point, it's so good. Number three for me is the track no one's mentioned yet, Premature Burial. Totally unrelated, but I really liked the movie The Serpent and the Rainbow when I was a teenager, and it always just makes me
Yeah.
think of that. Number two, Placebo Effect. I mean, for the guitar sound in the intro alone, but not only that, once it transitions into this like the guitar is like has this just swagger, and then after that it goes into this really catchy single note melody. I think that song is the pinnacle of his playing and just highlights him as a guitar player. Number one, Greg, completely agree with you. Favorite track from the first two records, if not a little bit beyond that, is Icon. I saw one of the final Banshees shows in 2002 when they played at the Hollywood Palladium with David J. from Bauhaus Love and Rockets opening, and they actually played Icon, so I was fortunate to get to see that played live. But yeah, number six for me is the second album, Join Hands.
All right. Number six for me is 1982's A Kiss in the Dream House. For me, this is the most overrated of their OG albums. It always felt like it was missing something for me. They had fired their longtime manager, Neil Stevenson. Genius guitarist John McGeoch was about to suffer a mental breakdown, leave the band. It just didn't feel assured to me. This was the first new Banshees album I bought as it came out because I'd gotten Juju about 6 months after its release when I was a brand new fan. So I judged this at the time against Juju in a way maybe somebody who experiences the albums out of sequence might not. I know it's really beloved among the fandom, but even back in the 80s, I had this take on this album. I had already discussed what I like the most about the Banshees, and Dreamhouse again touches on my sort of peculiar notion of what I like the most about the band. It downplays guitar compared to all the other albums prior to Peep Show. It's very arty, has a lot of experimental material. There's too much reliance on strings and not enough guitar brilliance. Maybe it's not even a lack of guitar. It's just that McGeoch's playing on this album doesn't have the fire and the catchiness that it did for me on Juju and his half of Kaleidoscope. Some of the songs, I mean, Cascade, Painted Bird, She's a Carnival, they're really nice enough songs. They're good, but to me, they're just not remotely as great as any of the big songs on the prior two albums. They just feel a little bit like cookie cutter to me. They're kind of like sort of Banshees light. And then there's some songs I just don't really like anymore. Like Circle, I never liked. It's just a little too repetitive. It should have been a B-side. And as you mentioned, Brett, Slow Dive. I mean, it was a single. It's cool, but it just never really blew me away. I will say that Kiss in the Dream House has my favorite Banshees cover art. The decadent, colorful, Art Nouveau, Gustav Klimt vibes. It fits their aesthetic super well. As far as three songs, I'm going to go with Cascade at 3. Number 2, Cocoon. As Brett said, it's jazzy and sensual. I love it. And number 1, Melt, which I think is the sole top tier Banshee songs here. It's a haunting madrigal. Steven Severin's most feverishly erotic lyrics. I love the mandolin-like melodies and Siouxsie's gorgeous, gentle vocal performance on that song. So number 6, Kiss in the Dream House.
Well, it's also my number 5, Greg, and this is actually really funny because I feel like you and I have the same. We go through this every time, right? I'm the art rock kid. You're the guitar hero. I feel like in general, this aligns. And so for everything you're saying that you didn't like about this album, is the reasons I really like this album. It's just sort of.
I mean, it's still a great album. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
And we're in a band. It's great that we're in a band together because we get to fight about this every. About whether we want more guitars or want more art rock. No, we don't really fight about it that much. Not these days. Anyway, but certainly, I love this. Sometimes has been my favorite record of theirs because it's so experimental. It really does lean more into those sexual moments, those sensual, really beautiful, romantic things that I really love about the Banshees. I think those like that era of the Banshees, like they've found melody, but they've also experimented with the melody to become a better singer. There's love and there's energy and there's eroticism in the air, and it gives it a bit of frenzy and focus and passion, and the psychedelia and all that just really makes it really interesting to me. So I really enjoy that about it, but I also love how I love same things you didn't like, the organic feel, the strings, the bells, the flutes. I like that, the flamenco feel on certain tracks. It's something they flirted with before, but you don't really, you don't hear it as foremost as you do Melt. Melt really has that, like, it really just goes full flamenco. And Greg, you said it's a really top tier song. I really love Obsession, which I think is sinister but sensuous. I think Circle is relentless in that way that's hypnotic and cool, and it gives it a really unique flavor that I really like. So this could be a favorite some days, and it has been in other times. But I like these flawed records. I love the top. We talked about it at Curator Record. I love the top for some of the same reasons. The top's a little more manic and not as sexy, but this one has a lot of the same kind of flavors. It's almost within a couple years of each other. It's got a lot of that same psychedelia to it. So yeah, so three. But that said, despite liking all the experimental stuff, my three favorite tracks are probably the most on the nose tracks for them. So number three for me is Green Fingers. I really like the bass groove and the flutes. It's a really nice track, and just a nice track too for me on this one. Number two is Painted Bird, but it's a powerful classic. I think it's the most like Juju in that way. It's got the really driving dark energy that they are known best for. And number one for me is Cascade, which is such a great roller coaster of emotions. What a great opener. Thrills, chills, spills all over the place. So Kiss in the Dream House, number six for me. No, five. Sorry, five.
All right, number five for me, and obviously the highest this album is appearing on any list, and that's going to be Superstition from 1991. 1991 was one hell of a year for music. Just between the overwhelming abundance of landmark albums that came out that year, also the year I started college. It was the birth of the first Lollapalooza touring festival, which featured the Banshees supporting this record alongside groups like, Jane's Addiction, Nine Inch Nails, Living Colour, etc. They entered the 90s with this, their 10th album, working, as already mentioned, with Stephen Hogg, who had a pretty impressive resume at the time: New Order, Erasure, PIL, Pet Shop Boys, OMD, and would later go on to co-produce James Whiplash album, which I really love. A more electronic vibe, certainly dips into the pop realm. Uh, to me, there's loads of great tracks with a massive single that always gets cranked up when it comes on, and some really chilling deep cuts, I think. My least favorite songs are what take it down a couple of pegs. I've never liked Single Fear of the Unknown. Fear, like, I just can't. Like, there were some B-sides to this, to some of these singles that would have fell in very nicely. Got to Get Up is another one that I don't care for as well. And while I'm not going to include these in my top three, as there's no room, because I actually have a really difficult picking favorites from this one, because I really do like Superstition a lot. Drifter, as you guys mentioned, Greg mentioned Shadow Time. I think that's just a great pop single. Softly, all gems. But my three favorites I'm going to go with on this one are going to be the album closer, The Ghost in You, not to be confused with the Psychedelic Furs songs. That little synth melody that kicks in after the 3-minute mark is just brilliant. I always wait for it. Number two, Little Sister, is just haunting. And number one, I never get tired of it, Kiss Them for Me. Just a great single. And yeah, so I'm putting it here at number five, despite what my colleagues here placed it at. So there we go, Superstition.
All right. From this point on, it's all albums that are like 10 out of 10 for me. These are great. And I think this is the highest this album, strangely, is going to be, is the Scream, the debut, is number five for me. You guys have already talked a lot about it. So, like you said, it's a foundational text of post-punk, the icy, severe noir, like Joy Division, they made bleakness sound exciting. One thing that I think wasn't mentioned is I feel like lyrics were really a big part of what made this album garner so much attention back in 1978. In many cases, they seem more drawn from avant-garde cinema or things like Hitchcock or Polanski films, and I think that was a big part of it. As you mentioned, Brett, John Mackay doesn't really maybe get as much props as he should, except by musicians, because he gets, crazy kudos from actual guitar players. The massive depth of his influence, even on people like you wouldn't expect, like The Edge or Steve Albini or John Frusciante, it's really underplayed in the mainstream music world. He's probably the single most influential post-punk guitarist of that era. And his experimental and unique style and use of atonal minor chords, it brought a proggy art pop element to punk rock, and really that's how post punk was created. He also wrote all of the most complex stuff on this album, and he, as you guys noted, he played awesome sax, which is one thing I miss on all of the post Mackay albums. As far as songs go, I mean, I'll mention a couple that I'm not going to pick. I love Suburban Relapse. The sax dissonance kind of recalls King Crimson's 21st Century Schizoid Man to me a little. I love, as Frank noted, the Teutonic astringency of Metal Postcard. And you mentioned Carcass. I like how the Ghoulish song and Nicotine Stain kind of recall their punk rock past from a couple of years earlier, but they're still really fun. The three songs I will pick, number 3, Mirage, as you guys noted, it's one of their catchiest early songs. Number 2, you guys noted Switch, which is a real guitar showcase for Mackay. He used a lot of interesting chiming and echoing chords, almost like Fairport Convention-y. And my favorite, which I think Frank mentioned, is Overground. Those regal orchestral chords are just incredible. I love when the drums kick in at like 122. It's one of their most exciting moments in their discography. And as Frank noted, the 1984 Thorn EP really leans into that, but the original is, in my opinion, just as good. So number 5, The Scream.
It really pains me to put it so low because I don't hate it. And like I said, when I want it, I want it. So it really just it just goes to show that their catalog is so there's so much you can get out of it at any different time in your life, and really how that can affect you. Actually, I put it on today. I actually was listening to it before we reviewed, and I was like, man, I think I put it too low because I was enjoying it more. But I had to go with my feelings because it's sometimes really I don't like it. But that said, Greg, I will agree that from here on out, it's 10 out of 10. So with that being said, my number 4 is going to be 1980s Kaleidoscope. And I think it's really where the band's truly figured out some of that early rickety stuff, and which is still kind of rickety way, but it's kind of flawed in such a really cool way. You have my 2 favorite Banshees musicians here for the first time. You have Budgie and you have John McGeoch kind of popping in. This is John McGeoch's first stint right out of Magazine and Visage and things like that. You have Budgie just coming off the slits. And then between that impeccable musicianship and the shift into more focused songwriting, the album really shifts, really shines for me in that way. It's a massive step forward from those early kind of days and really delivers on really all the special things that make them a special band. There's but at the same time, it's also experimental. There's a lot of wild synth work on this, a lot of drum machines, Farfisa organ, I think there's in this one. The sax is here again, things like that. It's really supplementing the undercurrent of these, but the songs are really, truly great. So it makes it a really special record in the catalog. It's a really great transitional record to what was going to come after that. But it's one that showcases their different influences, and it still sounds really fresh to me. I feel like even though the amount of times I've listened to it, I get something new out of it every time, which I love. I actually found out recently I didn't realize Steve Jones plays guitar on this. Sex Pistols, obviously, big history with the Bromley contingent and with Siouxsie and playing with them in general. He does a great job. I didn't even realize it was Steve Jones because it sounds more, because Steve Jones is known for really playing very muscly kind of bar power chords and really ripping them. He actually does sound like John McGeoch to me. So you could have fooled me in some ways. The way he does sprinkles and peppers, it sounds more Banshee-ish than it does Sex Pistols, and I like that. This was the hardest track. This was the hardest record for me to pick 3 tracks from, because every track was like, yes, this one, yes, this one, yes, 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 yes. I want to give a shout out to Desert Kisses, which I covered once with Revel Hotel before we had a guitar player. So my dumbass is figuring out how to play both the bass and the guitar line by using an octave pedal, one of those things where I was playing low, but I was also be able to transpose it. So I just kind of fudged different notes, and it sucked. We really kind of messed. We did not play it very well, but it was really cool to have tried because it was a really neat guitar, really fun to track. So good times on that one. Good times noodle salad, as they say, right? But so that one's up there. But my 3 favorites are Trophy, They're really cool. Like the drums on that one, they're really the simple like slapping drums on that. Number two is Red Light, which I love DJing. The little camera snaps, very Gigi Ballard in that way. Moody, sensual. I keep using this word with them, but it's kind of bleak, but bleak at the same time. And my favorite on here is Christine. I think Christine is a really great, majestic single, really lush and just irresistible and perfect. So I could say more about Kaleidoscope. I got to stop because it's only number four.
Number four for me, and this is going to be the highest this album achieves on in this video, and that is 1988's Peep Show, the band's 19th, ninth album. It's a grand production. I mean, Greg, you were talking about, replacing the guitars with a lot of, other instruments, and I really like that about this album, and it's a really great headphone album to listen to because of how the arrangements of the songs are really interesting. Non-traditional rock and roll instruments like accordion. It's carnivalesque. First album to feature John Cline on guitar, as mentioned. You guys all said it. When I wrote this, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to be in the minority on this, but least favorite is Burn Up, the Jack Be Nimble part. Oh, that song just should not be on the record. Three favorite tracks on this one. I feel like all of my picks have already been mentioned, but let's go through it. Number three, The Killing Jar, which is top tier Banshees, even it being my third favorite. Martin McCarrick's cello line, lots of cool sounds and textures, especially listen for that little percussive melody that leads into the second verse. That's really cool. Number two, Scarecrow. There's so much going on in this song. Siouxsie's vocals are super strong with those vocal trills that she does. The song breathes and expands. It's excellent. And number one, perhaps my favorite Siouxsie and the Banshee song, The Last Beat of My Heart. Absolutely glorious. Put your headphones on and listen to the layers of the accordion. There's synth drones, the pulsing single note strings, there's slight guitars, and with the lyrics, it's perfection. So number four for me is 1988's Peep Show.
All right, getting down here. Number four for me is 1984's Hyena, which is an album where I feel like they really got their dreamy pop mojo back. It's feverish, to use Frank's word, it's sensual, and it's excellently sequenced. I love the rich, wild, surrealistic imagery on this record. I loved it when it came out. It's grown on me, though, even more over the years, and it actually jumped a couple of spots on this list, and for a while, it actually was even at number three. I know I've gone on and on about how much of a Banshees guitar guy I am, but it's funny. The one exception to me is Hyena, because even though Robert Smith is a brilliant guitarist, one of my favorites, honestly, the stuff I love most on this album are the piano and string songs, weirdly enough. Take Me Back and Swimming Horses are among my very, very favorite top five Banshee songs, and they're clearly Robert Smith melodic piano pop songs, not the kind of arty things maybe that dominated Dreamhouse. And as I mentioned when we did our Cure video, I think Robert was a bit overworked producing music at such a frenetic pace in 1983, 84, but I do think he used some of his best material on this, maybe even more than on the top. I love a lot of songs on here. The vampiric Slinky We Hunger, Belladonna with its superb gliding bass. It's very Cure-like. I love the spaghetti western and Ennio Morricone guitar bits on Bring Me the Head of the Preacher Man and the finger cymbals. But if I have to pick three, I'm going to go with number three, Dazzle, which I believe Brett mentioned. I love the lush, stirring orchestration. It's such a perfect opening song. And it's such a really catchy song, despite basically just being an extended drone. It doesn't really have a traditional song structure. Number two, Swimming Horses, which is haunting. And to me, it's might be their best art pop single. Siouxsie's spine-chilling vocals on that song are just so tremendous. And I love Robert Smith's brilliant, watery guitar on it. It's great. And my favorite song is a kind of real dark horse song for them, Take Me Back, which doesn't really get much attention in the fandom, but I just think it's so spare and sad and bittersweet. And I just love it. The organ is tremendous. So number four, Hyena.
I enjoyed that we both air organ on that one, Brett. That was a good moment there.
Yeah, I have to say, I just love doing these videos because sometimes the way albums hit for us individually and don't hit for others is just really fascinating.
Mm. All right, so top three, right? Top three, and this is gonna be the lowest I bet this is gonna go on here. So please don't crucify me. My number three is gonna be 81's Juju. Number three, right? And honestly, this one could have switched with any of them. Juju is often, again, like I've said about Kaleidoscope or Dreamhouse, my favorite. And really, what I think about this is how much great about this record is how much ground the band covered in 3 to 4 years there, right? So it was released in 81. But it still sounds absolutely timeless. It's shimmering, it's dark, majestic, lush, deeply rich. The band seems to have fully unlocked their sound, kind of whether or not she said she's goth, because I know that they believe goth is goofy, and it is. This is the most gothic record, the darkest, the most really, it really hits that sweet spot of beautiful, romantic, terrifying sounds on here, and also while experimenting, they also wrote two of the best singles of their career on this one while tugging at the heartstrings all over this thing. So this is kind of the perfect sound, the perfect blend of their early sound and what would come best from their middle era, which is kind of my favorite era of theirs. So with Spellbound, the way it opens, that furious acoustic guitar, those tom fills, it's really just a majestic single. Every track on this record is in the right place. The only thing I would say is I think the last song was that is it Voodoo Dolly? Is that the last track? Or Head no, it's Voodoo Dolly. That's the one where I kind of feel like I get a little kind of like, all right, I go, that becomes a little more like Scream-esque to me. It doesn't work for me, so that's why I have to put it at three compared to the other two. It's not as intentionally perfect. Sometimes I love that really dark bleakness to it, and other times I kind of wish the album ended a bit more wonderfully in that way. Anyway, so I won't talk too much about Juju because I think you guys are going to say lots about it, and I know that it's generally the sacred cow, so I don't want to say anything negative about it because I do adore it. My three favorite tracks on here. Number three is Arabian Nights, which is really shimmering, moving. When that final verse comes back in with a really heavy double bass, I love that. It just gives me chills. Since hearing it, that was my first favorite Banshee song, and somehow it's still one of my favorites. Second favorite, another track I've covered with the same band, only this time we had a guitar player, and we did a much better job of it, is Night Shift. I love Night Shift so much. It's just such a really deep mood. If you're listening on headphones for that one, wait for the first time the song stops, and when you can just hear Siouxsie gasp, just go, and then it launches in the chorus, and it just kills me the way she lets that breath gasp kind of before she kill the other F, whatever. And it just really is intense. I love Night Shift, and it was such a great mood covering that. And kudos to my Revel Hotel bandmates for doing that. Barrett, you'll be watching this. Johnny, Robert, thank you for choosing that song and doing it with us, doing it with me. And my favorite on this though is Monitor, not named after the lizard or a bird, but it's what is it about closed caption TVs and being watched. It's very Ballard-esque in that way, JG Ballard. Really hypnotic. The groove on it's unstoppable. It's kind of my go-to Banshees track because I love DJing these tracks like this or Neon Judgment, Fashion Party, where the song stops and everyone's like, "You screwed up, man." I'm like, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't." There it is, and that drop. It's like the initial drop. It's like forget techno. The way Monitor does this is so cool. The false endings on it. So Monitor kills me, and Juju kills me overall. It's a really great record. Number three.
That dropout made me just think of a parallel of Beastie Boys Sabotage, and then it has that little bass break. Yeah.
And it's several drops, by the way. Several, not just one. It does a few of them, which I love.
All right, number three for me is I'm going with 1980's Kaleidoscope, the band's third record in less than a year, and after the departure of half the band. The Banshees would reinvent their sound with new members Budgie and John McGeoch. I think it's a fascinating album, kind of all over the place, but in a really good way. Side note, I was listening to this, and I always think of this, and I made a note to write this down, is that in the song Tenant, there's these little guitar phrases, and it always makes me think of I'm Afraid of Americans by David Bowie. It just feels like perhaps that could have been a little inspiration to it. Number three for me on Kaleidoscope, Desert Kisses. I live in the desert, and this song has this weird, dizzying effect that feels like what it's like to walk outside when it's 118 degrees in the summer. Number two for me is Paradise Place, which is a great song. Number one, Happy House. Such a cool interplay between the guitar and the bass in that intro. Great song. Number three, Kaleidoscope from 1980.
I'm going to jump right on that with you, Brett. I'm going to also pick Kaleidoscope at number three, which is, it was a transitional album for the band, but it's a great one. There were two new faces, as Frank noted. I think it's interesting because even though the Banshees were my favorite band for years, I was always a fan of the band as an ensemble rather than necessarily the founders of the band, which were Siouxsie and Steve Severin, which is not a diss against them. But if you ask me who my favorite members and who maybe I think are the most talented members, I would probably pick John McGeoch and Budgie. So it was really important that they came along here. I think an interesting thing about this album is how the title really reflects the music after the gray architectural almost attack of the Scream and Join Hands. Siouxsie's vocals are noticeably warmer, more controlled, and the band is more nimble and melodic. I think Nigel Gray's production really brings a lot of clarity and depth to their sound. He worked with the Police. You can kind of hear him expanding the breadth of their music. It's experimental in a different way to the first two albums. And you guys both noted songs like Christine, which has like folk rock, and Red Light uses electronics. So it's really different kind of experimentation to those first two albums. I'll also agree with Frank. It's like a big shout out to Steve Jones for guesting on half the record, because you would, like you said, you would never expect him to do a really great job on this kind of music, but he does. It's, post-punk is a bit outside of his wheelhouse, but I really like his kind of searing simplicity that he does on songs like Skin, Clockface, and Paradise Place. As far as the three songs, number three, I'm going to go with Hybrid. Has a nice bit of psychedelia, and it is one place where we do get the return of sax. John McGeoch plays it on there, similar to like what John Mackay would do on the earlier records. Number two, as you said, Brett, Desert Kisses is so dreamlike. It seems to move in this kind of languorous slow motion. I love that. And number one is Happy House, which is one of their classic singles. I don't know what I can say about it other than it's brilliant. So number three, Kaleidoscope.
All right, so number two, right? Boy, I still almost feel like flipping it now, but I'm again being true to myself. Number two is Tinderbox, 86. I love Tinderbox front to back. I think it is their most balanced record. I think there's not a dud, not a misstep, not a track I don't like. It is even my CD had all these B-sides on it, and even then I didn't realize that the album was shorter than that, right? So everything on Tinderbox and the Tinderbox era is fantastic. John Valentine Carruthers is first on this record after The Thorn. I don't think they liked him much. I don't think people liked him much. But I think he really shines on this record. I think he's kind of a really underrated key to this band. And they kind of let go of the experimental side of them and just made this really great pop, lush, beautiful, well-written record. So there's such a wall of sound on it. I think it's also their best produced album. It's really bright. It's engaging the whole way through. It's gripping. The drums soar but don't overpower anything. The bass is really live. The layers of the acoustic and the electric guitars really sit perfectly in the mix. Everything's crystal clear. It's just really just fantastic. So while it has the shortest amount of tracks, though, it has some of the longest tracks too. So three of them clocking in 6 minutes, which is kind of long for a Banshees track. But not a second of these tracks are wasted, I think. And like I said, there's not really a dud on it. So while my three favorites on them are album cuts, I want to talk about the singles for 2 seconds, as we can't not, right? As much as nobody wants to hear Cities and Dust at this time in life, and I feel like right now, just somewhere over there, it's being played in a goth club. I swear to God, somewhere. Right now, it's like, is it 3 o'clock yet? Has someone played Cities and Dust yet? Someone absolutely has. It really is truly a wonderful track. It really is a great track. And my, bitter ass just needed to take some time away from it and really fall in love with it again. So I really, really like it now again. And it's really nice. But and then Candyman, I think, is really an interesting track to lead it up. It's a really whirling dervish of a track that really kicks things off with great aplomb. I really like the production choices, the cooing, and the meow, 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 meow. This is really just some cool stuff happening on that. She's really, Siouxsie. This is a long stretch from Siouxsie, the atonal post-punk singer, to Siouxsie, the kitten, apparently. And That all said, though, my three favorite tracks here, Parties Fall for me, number three. It's the more wistful sister of Candyman for me. A lot of great churning guitar. Number two, 92 Degrees. It's a really true epic in their catalog. I really like when the chorus comes in with those really deep minor key melodies. And then really locks into place, and that track just sweeps me off my feet. Steve's bass tone, we haven't talked much about Steve Severin. His bass tone on 92 Degrees is fantastic. It's something I really try to lock into once in a blue moon when I remember that how much I like how it sounds. And my favorite track, and one of my top three favorite Banshees tracks ever, is this Unrest. It really starts with this ominous mood, anchored bass, and this kind of whirling synth line before it like grabs you by the throat. And I really like that about it. And then there's the pummeling yelps and I don't know if that's a chorus because it's really not really a chorus. There's not a chorus in this song. But wow, I really do like the way that song is structured and the way it kind of comes in and melds in out of track two with the sweetest chill, which is also great. This record is just really great. Number two for me, Tinderbox.
All right, number two for me. So, if you would have asked me for years my stock answer to what my favorite album was, it would have been what is now my number two pick, and that is Juju. Uh, and even in my previous album ranking video from over 10 years ago, this was my number one pick, but it is number two at this time. Released in 81, the band's fourth studio album, while both John McGeoch and Budgie performed on the previous album, Kaleidoscope. Juju is really where I think they both spread their wings and just soar. Uh, Three favorites on this one. Number three is Halloween, which I think is a great track. Number two, Frank already talked about it. Night Shift is just a chilling 6 minute intense ride. As you were talking about it, Frank, it made me feel like it's a little bit of a parallel to the song Scarecrow. It kind of has a similar kind of up and down ride on that one. But my number one favorite on this record is Into the Light. It is this super cool interplay between the toms and the bass. And then John McGeoch comes in with this really quirky counterpart in the verses. And that descending guitar line in the chorus is so good. Into the Light is top tier Siouxsie and the Banshees for me. And number two, Juju, 1981.
All right, number two for me is Tinderbox, and for all of the reasons that Frank already mentioned. I'm gonna try not to echo too much of what you said there. Like you said, it does not have a weak moment. It's colorful, it's mature, it's melodic. It's probably their most dream poppy album, but it never gets boring or bland. I think it's a late period masterpiece, and as you noted, it's a really, really underrated record. I do think it's Susie's finest hour as a singer. You mentioned that. I love how warm her voice got on Tinderbox. It almost approaches Stevie Nicks' Sandy Denny territory. And you also talked about John Valentine Carruthers, and I feel like this was his album. I think he's their most underrated guitar player. The band really, as you noted, Frankie, they really did put him down later in a lot of interviews as a musician, and they kind of crapped on him about not being motivated enough, and maybe they're right. Maybe they did have to prod him too much to be creative, but the results here are unimpeachable. His work on Tinderbox, no matter how it came to be, is just spectacular. Um, as far as songs go, I love everything. The potent simmering, this unrest, the propulsive guitar web of Parties Fall. You mentioned those. I agree with you, Frank, too. The singles are great. They're them doing pop music really well. Um, but they're not necessarily my favorites. And yeah, I'm sick of Cities and Dust too, but it is great. I think that's maybe the only reason this album, if I had to pick a tiny flaw, as much as I think Cities and Dust is a brilliant song, I feel like sonically it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the songs. It came out a year earlier. And I maybe think that would have been better as one of their standalone singles and have maybe one of the B-sides that fit the sound of Tinderbox better would have just made it a little more unimpeachable. But that really doesn't detract from how good the record is. It tells you how great it is, how it is that I'm going to pick three totally different songs than you did, Frank, and they're all. I agree with yours. Were everything you said about the three you picked, I agreed with. So number three, Swedish Chill. I love the amazing vocals. I love that part, especially where she goes, "Ooh," it's just, oh, it just gets me. Number two, top five Banshee song for me, Cannons. Indelible guitar tapestry by Carruthers. And particularly, I'm going to call out Budgie on this song. His arranging skills here are on fire. the way he does the shot and the crack sounds to go along with what she's singing. It's just unbelievable. And I love the obscure, evocative lyrics like "Beneath the brooding sky, beneath its baleful eye," when she sings "Heralding the Rain." It's just so good. And number one, what would be on any given day, my favorite Banshee song is Land's End. Impeccably dramatic arrangement. I love how John Valentine Carruthers' hypnotic, weightless guitar hook plays against the gentle drum tattoo by Budgie, and it's kind of hushed, and then it builds to this astonishing revelatory climax. And I particularly just am always stunned by the way the music flickers when she sings "Moths touched by flame repeat their fatal game." It's just such a perfect arrangement. So yeah, number two, Tinderbox.
Right on. All right, so we're about to reveal our number one picks, and as tradition, we all had written down our predictions of what we thought each of our number ones were going to be. So, Frank, I chose Kaleidoscope for you, and I was obviously wrong.
I
Greg
was wrong too.
said,
Yeah.
did you say
Wow.
Kaleidoscope too?
I said
Oh,
Juju.
Juju. Gotcha. All right,
Huh.
so we are obviously incorrect. So, Frank, what is your number one?
It is Hyena. And you're number 11, Brett. What the hell, dude? So here's why it's Hyena, even though I think it's really Tinderbox, because Tinderbox is perfect and Hyena is not. Here's why Hyena is my favorite. Apart from the second singles collection, Twice Upon a Time, this is my first Banshees record. In college, I grabbed it from the WNY library. Obviously, being a massive Cure fan in high school, I couldn't wait to get in the Banshees, and I couldn't find anything. So, of course, the first thing I grabbed, oh yeah, I know Robert Smith's in this. I have to hear it. So really, I have a little bias to that. But like Greg, like you've said, Robert Smith really does bring a lot to this, and he brings a lot to it that is not heard on some of the Cure things that were happening at the same time, for better or for worse. So the song really does, despite having Robert Smith and being a Cure boy for life, does capture my imagination. It makes my heart soar from beginning to end, despite the flaws. I think the flaws are actually make me love the album even more. Those little moments of imperfection. I love that about music. I love that about life. I love that about beauty in the world. I like when things are imperfect, and therefore it does that. So I think obviously we talked about the deep circle of influence between the Banshees and the Cure. And it's usually actually the Banshees that inform what the Cure is doing. Robert Smith is known for being, having to emulate, not just emulating, having to emulate John McKay and John McGeoch at certain points in their career, and he does a great job on that. He does. There are times where it doesn't sound like Robert Smith, but then there's things he does. We've talked about, like, we talked about the organ, and we talked about the piano, and Take Me Back, Swimming Horses, Belladonna. Those are Cure moments. They really truly are. Or Glove. It sounds like Punish Me with Kisses, or things like that. Same kind of world to me. But overall, what I love about this record, despite the Robert Smith thing, is I do find it very romantic, but also very vulnerable, but while sounding like classic Banshees and not The Cure. And that's why I have to rank them as my favorite, really. So my three favorite tracks here. Number 3 is Belladonna, which is a great lyrical moment. So it's actually Daylight Devours Your Unguarded Hours. It's a really romantic song. I think Siouxsie's in love, and it suits her, which is actually really funny because I think Steve Severin wrote the lyrics to that one. So there you go. So Belladonna, I think, is a really perfect Banshees track. Number 2 for me is Running Town, which is really a manic pop psychedelia, really fun kaleidoscopic track. It does have all those things that the Kaleidoscope and Kiss in the Dream House do, and also has that Cure moment, and name checks the Helter Skelter without being that cover of Helter Skelter. Love Running Town. It's awesome. And my favorite track, and my favorite Banshees track, play this at my wedding, is Dazzle. The way it comes in, it fades in, crashes down really hard. The way it kind of comes in after that really ethereal dream pop string intro, and kind of comes slamming into the really big sweeping drums and the really intense string playing. It just really expands on Fireworks or Slow Dive, and it really is just epic. I think it has the favorite is my favorite lyric of theirs, and one of my favorite lyrics of all time, which I measure my own lyrics upon: the skidding bullets off angel dust in the dead sea of fluid mercury. And it's the way the music kind of just swells behind it. Dazzle, 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 dazzle. It's a glittering prize. Hyena is my favorite thing in the world sometimes. There you have it.
All right. We're going to be going predicting Greg's choices. And for those of you watching, just keep in mind that once we finish the all of our number ones, we're going to be ranking our 10 favorite non-album tracks as well.
Actually,
Greg, I
Brett, aren't you
have to.
going next? Aren't you
Oh,
next?
sorry, it is me.
Yeah.
I'm so used to going last. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. All
Yeah.
right. So number one for me.
Wait. We have to guess for you. We have to
Oh,
pick
sorry.
our
Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah,
My guess.
I'm all messed up.
I
It's
had
all right.
guessed Peep Show. I was wrong.
All
I guess
right. And Frank
Tinderbox.
said Tinderbox. Okay. Greg, you said what? Peep Show?
Peep Show, yeah.
All right. So, Frank, you are correct. It is 1986's Tinderbox. These days, if I'm going to pick out a Siouxsie and the Banshees album to put on and listen to, Tinderbox is the one I often reach for. The band's seventh album, recorded at the legendary Hansa Studios in Berlin. You guys have already talked about John Valentine Carruthers on guitar. I think he's a really underrated guitar player, musician. You guys have already talked about Cities and Dust, probably the most widely known Siouxsie and the Banshee song. And whenever it starts up, Frank, you're talking about goth clubs. I see the people coming out of the off the sidelines and coming onto the dance floor. Song's over, everyone kind of scurries back. Um, uh, it's a great song, but nowhere near my favorite on this record. Number three for me, Parties Fall. Frank already mentioned, Greg, you might have as well. The guitar and the drums on that one, top notch. Number two, Frank, you already talked about This Unrest. I mean, what a jam. It's dark and just menacing is the word I would say. I feel like it's one of the earliest Siouxsie and the Banshee songs I remember hearing. From the delay that's on the drums, the jagged guitar chords, the feedback, the wah, and then suddenly it just out of nowhere, it double times into this swirling chaos. This Unrest is top tier Banshees for me, but my number one favorite song on Tinderbox, and perhaps my second favorite Siouxsie and the Banshee song of all time, is Swedish Chill. At the 2 minute and six mark, there's this guitar motif that enters that is just so emotional, goosebump inducing, and the very reason this song resonates so hard with me. Dun, 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 dun. It's just so beautiful. So yeah, number one for me is 1986's Tinderbox. All right, over to our predictions for Greg. I'm happy to say. Oh, actually, both of us are correct, even though
This
mine
was
was like
easy.
an
This was
L
easy.
after
Easy.
after the
Yep.
U. But yeah, so go ahead, Greg.
All right. Well, yeah, of course, it is 1981's Juju. This is the album that made me a fan as soon as I bought it in early 1982. To me, it's still their ultimate album. It's conceptually perfect. Production-wise, it's perfect. As you noted, Frank, it's where McGeoch and Budgie were fully integrated into the ensemble. Speaking of John, I mean, to me, this is one of music history's greatest guitar players having their single greatest moment. I mean, he's just on fire on the whole album. There's just so many highlights. I love every song. You guys talked about them all, so I'm not going to say too much other than I like how Juju introduces a kind of really cool funk element to the band's arsenal, from the sleek and gory head cut to the crushing riff of Monitor. They hadn't really done that before this album, and I think that's really cool. I also think what's interesting about it is the album works as an utterly successful evocation of horror in music in a way that no other band really did at the time. It's really distinct from, say, I don't know, Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath, the Cramps, the Misfits, any other bands that tried to do, and successful in their own right, to do horror in music. But this is something on a totally different level. It's, again, you have to compare it to film. It's got, it's Hitchcock, it's Hammer horror, it's Cronenberg, all in a sonic element. Voodoo Dolly, I know you mentioned kind of being like tired of it at the end there, but I think what's, even though it's not my favorite song on the album, I think it's a great example of supernatural horror in music at its best. I mean, John McGeoch is just going insane at the end of it, and he conveys so much fear in his playing. I mean, you think of that great famous quote by Siouxsie of why she loved John McGeoch so much as a musician was she could tell him, play something that sounds like a herd of horses galloping over a cliff. and he would be able to do it. And I think this album really highlights that. Each song, he provides something so unique to accompany the lyrics. Even Halloween, which I think Steven Severin's best bass line and some of his most vivid lyrics. I love how McGeoch, he decides what to play on it. It's this stabbing symphonic guitar line. It just adds so much to it. But you guys talked about it so much, I'll stop there. But I will talk about my three favorite songs. Number 3, Spellbound, which is folk goth at its finest. It's the first thing I ever heard by the band back in 1981. Immediately, engrossed. I found it immediately engrossing. I love the stunning arrangement, McGeoch's marvelous arpeggios that he was known for, and I think it's one of Budgie's star moments when he again in an arrangement when he evokes the lyrics "throw him down the stairs" and he somehow is able to convey that with his drum fill. It's so cool. Number 2, Arabian Nights. I mean, God, that dreamy opening chord is so iconic. And I know it's not technically a solo. You mentioned, Frank, that their only solo was much later, but there's a moment in the Arabian Nights where John McGeoch does play this solo piece, and it's paired to when Siouxsie's going, ha ha ha, and it's just it's one of his great moments. And I love the scathing lyrics. And my favorite song on the album, which you talked about a little, Brent, which is kind of tied with Land's End as my favorite song by them, which is Into the Light, which is just so hauntingly weird and beautiful. And again, you mentioned it. I love the delayed chords he uses and the lyrics. Into the line, our hearts entwined. It gets me every time. So yeah, can never. I thought about could I pick Tinderbox, and I was like, no. My heart will always be Juju, number 1.
Well said. Well said. All right, so we're going to move on to the non-album track portion. As a reminder, check out the links in the description for those 3-song playlists that we're putting together for you to check out, each of our individual choices. So non-album tracks, we're going with B-sides, demos, outtakes, non-album singles, EP tracks. Frank, take it over, number 10.
Cool. I know we kind of like to throw a couple honorable mentions there, so I'm going to say that I actually found my 11 to 20 to be much more difficult to rank, and so I just want to throw out a couple names. Staircase is great. Red Over White, the Thorn version, Hothead, Love and Avoid, Face to Face, and Sunless are all phenomenal tracks that I want to include, but I can't, so I'm just going to throw them out there just to say, listen to all those tracks. Maybe they'll be in some of everybody else's list. But my number 10 is I'm going to start off with an instrumental. I'm going to go with A Sleeping Rain, which is the B-side from Melt. I think it's really cool how many wonderful B-sides they have and wonderful non-albums that have vocals. This one really captures my imagination in a really lovely way. It sounds like a very lush, less cold take on the track Lunar Camel from Kaleidoscope, and I like that about it. And I think there's a really sustained guitar loop in the background. It has a really big percussive note on it, xylophones, congas, all the things I love best about Banshees. Other instrumentation. So Sleeping Rain, number 10.
Right on. I don't have any honorable mentions that I'm gonna mention, but I want to say that out of all the non-album portions that we've put together as part of our album ranking videos, this was the easiest one for me. These 10 just came like immediately, and nothing ever. They might have changed places, but nothing ever got swapped out and got bumped off of the list. So I'm gonna go number 10 for me. When we do these ranking videos, we tend to stick with the album track listing as it existed from usually the country of origin. In this case, Siouxsie and the Banshees being from the UK. But here in the US, my first exposure to the Hyena album had Dear Prudence as one of the songs in there. So my number 10 pick is going to be Siouxsie and the Banshees' cover of the Beatles song, Dear Prudence. And it's technically a non-album single and didn't appear on the original UK release. I think the Banshees did a wonderful job on this one. Poppy, psychedelic with Robert Smith's shimmery arpeggios. Number 10, Dear Prudence.
Okay, yeah, I love all their B-sides, and I'm gonna give a couple of honorable mentions. Song from the Edge of the World, Pulled to Bits, I Promise, Make Up to Break Up, I Could Be Again, B-side Ourselves, and Il est né le divin enfant. Hurt me to leave some of those off, but for number 10, I'm going to go with the B-side to the Mittegeisen single from 1979, which is Love and Avoid. Furious, blinding. It's probably the most potent of all of their early punk rock material. Number 10, Love and a Void.
Great choice. My number 9 is going to be the B-side from Christine called Eve White, Eve Black. It's a really great tense track based upon the three faces of Eve. It's really it seems like all the B-sides from Kaleidoscope are really nasty pieces of work. And this one wins because it really captures the duality of a split personality like that movie would. It's really half dreamy and demure and beautiful, and the other half is a caustic teardown. And it's really fantastic on the Nocturne version too, with Robert Smith playing it. So Eve White, Eve Black from Christine is my number 9.
Number 9, I'm going to go with Face to Face, commissioned by film director Tim Burton for Batman Returns, co-written with thank you, Frank, frequent Burton collaborator for former Oingo Boingo frontman Danny Elfman. Siouxsie gives a really great vocal performance on this one. Number 9, Face to Face.
Number 9 for me is Lullaby, which is one of the B-sides to the 1986 Candyman single. It's, to me, another minor classic from the John Valentine's Carruthers era, and with a really memorable ending. Number 9, Lullaby.
Okay, number 8 for me, also John Valentine's Carruthers, also Tinderbox era. It's going to be the quarter drawing of the dog, another instrumental actually as well. I love JVC's chugging guitar on this one, and it's really on full display in this one. And the childlike synth melody that comes in halfway through, dun, 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 dun. It kind of gets me it's really beautiful and childlike, and I like that about it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, the Cure record from this era that has that, but it actually has a really great shoegaze break towards the end of it, which I really love too, and it guts me. Just a really innocent, lovely, lots of interesting things going on. It's a very bipolar, great B-side, quarter drawing of the dog.
Excellent. Number 8 for me, I am going with Red Over White, the released as the B-side to the 1980 non-album single Israel. The band would re-record it, as Frank had mentioned in his honorable mentions. I think you mentioned it, on the Thorn EP in 1984 with new guitarist John Valentine Carruthers. I enjoy both versions. Both have some super cool percussion from Budgie. The original has those killer wailing guitar licks from McGeoch in the outro. The Thorn version is a bit more evolved in its arrangement, and Siouxsie's vocals a bit more direct. But I'm not going to choose between them. I'm just going with Red Over White for my number 8 pick.
For my number 8, I'm going with the B-side to the Dear Prudence single from 1983, Tattoo. Hypnotic, nocturnal. It's been called proto trip hop, and I can kind of see that, and it's kind of affirmed by the fact that Tricky covered it in 1996. But yeah, it's a classic Banshees B-side, Tattoo.
Okay, number 7, right? So number 7 for me is a B-side from the Covers record. It's Something Blue. I think it's a really haunting lullaby, really delicate percussion. But what makes it most for me on this one is the ethereal synth work on this one. It can almost be sort of a Creatures track, but not so. I love Something Blue. Check this one out. I feel it's a deep cut in their B-sides catalog.
Number 7 for me, one of the B-sides to Kiss Them for Me. This is Staring Back. My face in the window has become the face of a woman I never knew. Who is she? Perhaps it's a reflection on growing older and not recognizing the person staring back at you in the reflection, but I think it's a beautiful track. Staring Back is my number 7.
My number 7, piggybacking on what Brett said about it, is Red Over White, the B-side of Israel from 1980. I also love both versions, but I think I'm going to go with the original, which, at least until the end where McGeoch comes in, it's basically kind of like a proto-Creatures piece. Budgie's drums are amazing. It has a wonderfully uneasy, haunted, dreamlike vibe. I absolutely love the lyric, "I'll transform to a fairy tale." So good. Red Over White.
Cool. My number 6, I'm going to go a song from The Edge of the World. Non-album single, kind of unfairly maligned. The band really hates it, and I think they're being really stubborn about it because I think it's about the producer and not about the song. So either way, Song from the Edge of the World is really great. I like the 12-inch version and the 7-inch version, so it really doesn't matter. It does a great job continuing the bright melodies of Tinderbox, but showcasing Martin McCarrick and John Klein. I like the way it gallops and soars. So Song from the Edge of the World, which was a rarity until very recently. It was almost, you couldn't get it on CD. But There you
Keep
go.
that one held up, Frank, because that's my number six pick as well. Originally demoed for Tinderbox, the band would rework it with John Valentine Carruthers, replacement John Klein, and multi-instrumentalist Martin McCarrick, and release it as a non-album single 4 months after the release of Through the Looking Glass. I think it's a fantastic track, so if you don't know this one, add it to your Siouxsie Discovery playlist. Song from the Edge of the World, number six.
Okay, my number six is the 1982 non-album single, Fireworks. Utterly majestic. I think it's their most evocative strings-based single. It would have really shined on Kiss in the Dream House. I think it would have made that album a little better, but not that it isn't great, but it would have improved it to me. But it's a wonderful song, and it kind of doesn't get the attention maybe it deserves. So number six, Fireworks.
I think Fireworks is the first track I ever heard, aside from Hyena. So I do love that track. Yeah, Twice Upon a Time, I think it kicks it off and it's really special. Kind of pains me not to have it. But for my number five, I'm going to go with Sleepwalking on the High Wire from Wheels of Fire. Really a great song. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a lot of U2 or The Outfield or these like 80s shimmering kind of bands. It's a really deep compliment. I actually love that stuff. I think that like kind of like chugging guitar on this one. It's a really lovely mood. It's got the soaring, sappy 80s that I can't resist without going too cheesy. So yeah, Sleepwalking on the High Wire. Really check that song out if you haven't. A really special one.
Number five, I'm gonna piggyback on Greg with Fireworks. Released. First off, I agree with you. If that was on Kiss in the Dream House, I think that would have elevated that for me. Released 7 months before Kiss in the Dream House. It's a cool blend of strings, which always makes me think of the Beatles' Eleanor Rigby, and just an upbeat post-punk energy. It's a great track. Number five, Fireworks.
All right, number five for me is their 1979 non-album single, The Staircase Mystery. It's a startling song. It's another kind of like evocation of Hitchcock in soundscape. John Mackay's serrated gliding chord pattern, it was really influential. You can hear it in the early Robin Guthrie work on the early Cocteau Twins albums. I just always love this song. It's killer. The Staircase Mystery at number five.
Number four, it's on the 12-inch, which I have coming in the mail, so I can't show the 12-inch, but I'll show the 7-inch anyway, is Umbrella, which is the B-side to Candyman. It's, yeah. So Umbrella, I think, is a really deep snarl of a track, really moody. I like the vocals don't come in until about halfway, three-quarters of the way, actually, even through the song. And I think, like I said before, as Tinderbox had all these tracks, it had Lullaby, Quarter Drawing, it had, Umbrella, all on the CD. So it was hard for me to realize these were B-sides, but that being said, it's great to be able to talk about them here because this track is really special. So Umbrella from Candyman, my number four.
Number four for me, the 1980 non-album single, which I already showed the B-side, Israel. My first memory of this song was the show opener on the Nocturne album, for which I had remember finding a VHS copy for $1 many, many moons ago, and I no longer have that, unfortunately. But number four for me is Israel.
Okay, number four for me is the 1983 non-album single, Dear Prudence. I think the band has done many covers, done many covers over their existence, but I think this was the best one they ever did. I mean, obviously, I love the White Album original, but I think I love this version even more. It's effortlessly and gorgeously psychedelic. Siouxsie sings like an angel on it. Robert Smith plays guitar like an angel. It's a perfect cover and an amazing single. Dear Prudence at number four.
Agree completely. It's not on my list, but because it was on my copy of Hyena on the record, I know I can't. I should include it because of that. But glad you guys talked about it because it's a great cover. My number three, I'm going to piggyback with Greg on this. Greg, Brett. I'm sure it's on Greg's list too. It's Israel, number three. It's a total masterpiece, haunting, broody, gorgeous chants, religious mysticism, top tier Banshees. Israel.
Number three for me, Frank, I'm really glad you mentioned this one. Sleepwalking on the High Wire, which was an extra B-side on the 12-inch Frank showed of This Wheels on Fire. It's crazy that this song is such a deep cut. If you're unfamiliar, make sure to check it out. I was looking at setlist.fm because I was just curious yesterday. I was curious if they ever played it live, and just according to the set lists that are up there, it doesn't look like it was ever played live, which is pretty unfortunate. But I think it's an exceptional song and a massive deep cut in their catalog. Number three, Sleepwalking on the High Wire.
Okay, number three for me is kind of a dark horse. I never hear this song talked about. It's Dizzy from the only place this was released was on the Best of Siouxsie and the Banshees compilation in 2002, though it was recorded in 1994. It's a really kind of a forgotten song, and I don't really understand why this fantastic song was shelved until that compilation came out years later. To be honest, it's probably my very favorite song by them of the entire John Klein era, 1988 onwards. I think it's incredible. It has this feline groove with a lustrous Siouxsie vocal. I love the lyrics when she sings "Scorpio rising on the horizon." It's just so alluring. I love this song, and I don't understand why it's not more well known or why the band didn't do more with it. To me, it would have been one of the best singles from their later era. But I'm still picking it here. So number 3, Dizzy. Check it out.
You know another song which is not on my list that's from that same era that no one talks about? The Showgirl song. I can't remember the name of it, but it's on the Showgirl soundtrack.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. New
Yeah.
Skin. Is it New
Yeah,
Skin?
new skin. That's it.
Yeah.
Not bad. Also not bad. They really had a lot of great later era gems that I would have new skin, Dizzy, all the B-sides beside ourselves would have been so much better on the Rapture than some of those early tracks, like I said. So great pick. Glad you talked about Dizzy. Number 2, Greg, you already mentioned this one. It is Tattoo from Dear Prudence. Really haunting and beautiful. Yeah, really it sounds like Steve said on a Creature session. Proto trip hop, tricky cover, you said all that. And I think really the tension just remains so steady and it just gives me chills. Tattoo is a really special one.
Number 2 for me, contrary to my colleagues here, I have a lot of affection for the Superstition album, and I'm pulling out a cassette single for Kiss Them for Me.
I'm sorry, did you say cassette single or did you say single? Come on, just say it.
A single, yes.
Single.
So the song is Return, which is also on the 12-inch here. This song would have fell right at home in the track listing for Superstition, replacing one of the couple tracks that I mentioned in my earlier assessment of the record in the video. It's a total gem, and it follows my number 7 pick, Staring Back, and they segue right into one another without pausing. And the strings in the outro are really nice. So once again, if you don't know Return, please check that one out. I really, really like it. Kasingle.
All right, top 2 now. Number 2 for me, their debut non-album single from 1978, Hong Kong Garden. Yeah, it's so popular, but I honestly never get sick of this song. It's the song that made them famous, rightly so. It's so cool how the song is simultaneously sort of avant-garde, but it's also incredibly catchy. And it's another song that I can admit I ripped off in my band youth days, the guitar, whatever. I also want to make one tiny note. If you didn't hear about this, John Mackay just put out his first ever full length album. It's a collection of all his unreleased material from right after he left the Banshees up until more recently. It's called Sixes and Sevens. It came out within the last week or so. And the coolest thing, and Frank helped me find this. There's an additional disc that came out that has People Phobia on it, which is Hong Kong Garden. It's the full guitar arrangement of Hong Kong Garden with Mackay singing and his own lyrics, which oddly enough sound very like 1970s Brian Eno, John Cale sounding. So if you love Hong Kong Garden, you should check out People Phobia. But great song.
Cool. All right, number 1. Cool. This is my number 1 with a bullet, no, except no substitutes. Did not argue about this at all. It's the B-side to Face to Face. I have 2 versions. It's on the 7-inch, not on the 12-inch, but it's as cool that I have the 12-inch too. Face to Face is a great song in itself, but the B-side is I Could Be Again, which I think is one of the most intense and heaviest tracks since the Juju era, and one of the most classic sounding things the band ever did, aside from like Not Forgotten and some of the tracks in the Rapture, and years, in their Twilight years especially. I don't think it should have been a single necessarily, but it's surprised it wasn't at least an album cut. It's so good. I know they played it live towards the end of their career, maybe when they reunited even. I Could Be Again is really awesome and just rips. So I Could Be Again, my number 1 B-side.
Right on. My number 1 B-side, Frank, I was really happy to hear this one on your list. And that is Porter Drawing of the Dog is my number 1 pick. The extra B-side to the Cities in the Dust single. I love a great instrumental, especially in the kind of like alternative post-punk realm. Things like Theme for Great Cities by Simple Minds or The Church's Happy Hunting Ground. Those are just feel like kind of kindred spirits of this. Um, Frank, that wonderful little keyboard melody that's in there is just so emotional, nostalgic, and it doesn't the presence of that does not make you miss any vocal. It's a perfect little instrumental that says what it says just musically. It's a beautiful piece of music with kind of an unfortunate title, but that's my number one, The Quarter Drawing of a Dog.
All right. Number one, their non-album 1980 single Israel, Pure Magic. I know earlier in this video I said that Land's End and Into the Light were my favorite Banshee songs, but no, I lied. This is probably my favorite of their compositions. I love how it's got this wonderful evocation of winter and holidays with the sleigh bells. Each member of the band is just firing on all cylinders. Steve Severin's bass line is so driving. Budgie's masterful beat and all his little touches. Siouxsie's ornate vocal line and the choir. But God, this might be John McGeoch's most genius guitar line. It's dripping with chorus pedal and has those otherworldly harmonics. It's just such a perfect single, and to me, it's utterly iconic as a Siouxsie and the Banshees record. So, Israel, number one.
Right on. Well, thank you all for tuning in and watching. Be sure to check out the links for these guys and their individual projects and our playlists, which are going to include three tracks, our three choices from each album, along with each of our 10 non-album tracks. Will be in the description. Let us know your Siouxsie and the Banshees album ranking from number 11 to number 1, as well as some of your favorite non-album tracks as well. We look forward to reading your comments. And Frank and Greg, as always, thank you for being a part of this. We will be returning with our next artist here in soon. So thanks again.
All right.
Take
Now,
care.